Okay, so in our last episode, we talked about the realities of being a digital nomad, and we covered how to make money online, different ways to sustain the lifestyle, and some of the unexpected challenges that come with it. But today, we're taking it one step further, and we're going to break down some of the best and worst places to live. We'll discuss cost of living, healthcare, infrastructure, culture, and most importantly, get Jan's first-hand experience on some of the many places he's lived over the years. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation. And Jan, I think if it's okay with you, the first place we should begin should be the key considerations. What should people be thinking about when choosing the destination that they want to move to?
Yeah, there are few key factors that definitely need to be considered. The main factor, in my opinion, is the visa topic. Really depends whether you're looking to travel somewhere for a short period of time, let's say 1 or 2 months maybe, or whether you're looking to stay for an extended period of time, maybe 6 months, maybe longer. Countries have vastly different visa policies, and also depends a lot on your nationality. So that's something huge to consider. I personally spend a lot of time doing research on that topic. The second factor I personally consider quite a lot is the cost of living. Also varies drastically between countries. There are countries where digital nomads can have a very, very affordable lifestyle with a high quality of life as well. And there are countries that are definitely the opposite. So definitely something you want to consider when choosing a country. Third point, lifestyle. The lifestyle also varies drastically between countries. There are countries that are great for outdoor activities. If you're into surfing, for example, you want to go to the beach, you won't be able to do that in a country that's landlocked, for example. And then there are countries that are great for other things. So it really depends on what you're personally looking for, and that's something I would recommend everyone asking themselves before even starting their journey. What are you looking to see? And then picking the countries based on that. Infrastructure and internet, also a huge topic. Although that has improved quite a lot when I first started a few years ago, the internet topic was huge actually. Before even checking out visas, cost of living, or lifestyle, I would message Airbnb hosts and ask what's the internet speed in their apartment. Now I can almost not do that because the internet speed has improved quite a lot, I believe. Sure, there are statistics on it. I would like to explore them a little further. And infrastructure also a huge topic, especially when you have a busy schedule. You don't want to be too far away from an international airport. Definitely something to consider. And also the road network. That's something that varies quite a lot between countries. One example I can give, I've been to Laos many years ago, when Laos wasn't as developed as they are now. It's now a country that has a high-speed rail network, something the US doesn't even have, I believe. But it wasn't like that. And traveling from one place of the country to the other literally involved bus journeys, hour-long bus journeys over unpaved roads. And it was very, very narrow as well. Got sick several times. So definitely make sure you do your research on the infrastructure topic. Community is also something I find very important personally. Especially if you're someone traveling alone, you want to make sure that you're picking a country that has co-working spaces or other places where people gather and just have an exchange. More important for some people, it's less important for other people. It's definitely something you want to think about, whether that's important for you or not personally. And safety and healthcare also a huge topic. There are countries that are a lot less safe. You don't want to be robbed. I mean, maybe you do, but it's something to think about, right? Whether you're willing to take that risk to travel to a less secure country or not, and how to prepare also. And healthcare, has improved a lot, I believe, personally, especially in the destinations that I'm traveling to regularly, even rural places now seem to have access to good healthcare, or at least decent healthcare, even in developing countries. So that's good. But obviously, if you have a medical condition, or if you just want to make sure nothing bad happens, or at least if something bad happens, you're well protected, then make sure there's a good healthcare facility nearby.
Excellent. So we have, just to recap, visas. I think if you're going to make a checklist of some of the really key things to consider, you've got visas, cost of living, we have lifestyle, there was infrastructure, and internet. Essentially the same thing, but I guess internet should be its standalone because of its importance. You really want to make sure that, although Jan, you did mention that it's got a lot better, it's definitely something to consider because it will essentially be your lifeline to work. Healthcare, safety, and community. I don't want to get too sidetracked too early, but I am curious to know if you've had any healthcare issues or had to call upon the healthcare system of the places you've been staying?
Yeah, thankfully, not much. There were a few incidents, minor things, to be honest. Once I cut myself really bad, I had to go to clinic to get that stitched up. I had a little accident with my forehead in New Zealand, actually, where I was an accident in a swimming pool. I'm not going into details, probably better that way. Thankfully nothing major, but bad things can happen all the time, and they do happen all the time. So yeah, it's definitely an important topic in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, even more important if you have like a medical issue, and then that's something that you'd definitely consider. Like if you need a regular access to, I don't know, let's just say insulin for diabetes or something, you need to make sure that it would be readily available in wherever you're staying. So healthcare should definitely be a standalone part of your checklist to check out. If we go to the top of that list, visas, I think that's obviously going to be key to your ability to enter a country. Obviously, Google is a great place to start, but are there any more particular sources of information that you would recommend to find out more about visas? I imagine probably just going directly to government websites is a very good start, but sometimes the language that they use, the systems that they have in place can be quite complex, complicated, quite slow as well in many cases. So are there any really good resources, places that kind of distill the information, make it super simple to understand, that you'd recommend?
I personally find Wikipedia a very good source because it's updated, almost instantly whenever visa policies change. So what I do is basically I just search for visa policy and then enter the country name, and then I find a well-researched Wikipedia page. It's almost always up to date. Especially when it gets closer to the date I'm actually traveling to, I'm doing additional research, checking the country's website also. Wikipedia is a great first source to realize whether a country is potentially a destination or not for you.
Wikipedia is a great shout. I never would have thought to try Wikipedia for something like that. And I guess the fact that it is so frequently updated is an important thing to consider because these visa policies are constantly changing. Something I've noticed is how often they change is unbelievable. Countries, I think, are very reactive to the locals and the way they might feel about tourism, the way they might feel about people coming across and working. And they're reacting quite strongly to certain scenarios, like Spain, for example, that at one point were incredibly keen to take digital nomads. We're incredibly keen to take migrants who are going to come over and work. And now there's a lot more hostility, particularly towards tourism, but that has also distilled down towards migrants as well, which means that their politicians react to that and change laws, change legislation around digital nomads, around visas. So that's definitely a good recommendation. A source like Wikipedia that will be up to date, or at least you'd hope, probably the best place to find up-to-date information, is a great recommendation. Cost of living as well, I just want to jump into that quickly. A great source of information for cost of living, and we did mention this in the previous episode, was Numbeo, which I'll link below along with anything else in the show notes. But that's a really, really good source of information. I used that recently for a video on how to move to Spain. There's loads of information on there on cost of living. It's all updated by locals or people that are living in the areas. You've got all the different cities. Most of the very popular cities are available around the world, but also some of the more smaller cities, for example, in Spain, like somewhere like Granada, which, it's not Barcelona, it's not huge, but it's also very popular. And that has lots of information around cost of living as well. So you even get some of the more smaller places where you might be considering moving to. Interestingly, on internet, quickly, Jan, one thing I found is there's a lot of remote worker indexes and studies these days that you can find on Google where they're indexing the best places to live. And you mentioned this about internet, and one of the factors that they consider is internet speeds. And so if that's something you're looking for, just look for like remote worker indexes, look for even like, I think The Economist have a piece on it. I'll have a look and see if I can find it. And if I can find it, I'll link it below as well. But they talk about remote work and they talk about the importance of internet. And I think that's something definitely worth considering. I suppose nowadays though, Jan, when you do book an Airbnb, it's probably in the interest of the host to make sure that the internet is great. So I assume you no longer reach out and ask how fast the internet is.
But I still do this sporadically, to be honest, specifically in developing countries, but a lot less in developed countries nowadays. I just assume it's good, and I do know that in case it's not good, I have an eSIM to fall back to. Which should also work fine, right? Tethering from an eSIM. It's not the ideal scenario, but it's it could be worse.
And community, safety, and healthcare, those last things to note or key factors to consider. Community, understanding the local community. Are there sources of information that you'd recommend? In my head, I'm thinking places like Facebook, I'm thinking forums, message boards, Reddit. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yeah. Facebook and Reddit, those are my two primary sources for getting in touch with other people that are in the same destination than I am. Whether it's locals or expats, really doesn't matter. Both platforms are great.
I'm sure that also ties into the safety as well, understanding how safe a country is. There'll be message boards where people will have conversations about safety.
Yeah, although if you're a lot on Reddit and reading a lot about safety, you'll realize that there's a lot of very cautious people. Let's call it like that. So they try to protect themselves from everything, which is good, right? But do your own research as well. Maybe get in touch with locals, ask them how it is in a specific destination, and don't fully trust on the internet voices you might find.
Healthcare finally is obviously very important. We touched on that, but understanding what healthcare will be available to you. Are there resources? I mean, does it all just sort of stem back to visas, like using like Wikipedia to understand the healthcare system? Is that a good resource?
You don't want to look at the healthcare on a macro level. So on a country level, for example, you want to look at it on a micro level. So once you know where in a country you're traveling to, then start doing research on how to access healthcare, because it really varies by region, right? As you can probably imagine. It's the same in the UK as well. In major cities, you will have better healthcare than on the countryside. So it's definitely something to research on a micro level.
It's like this list of key factors: visas, cost of living, lifestyle, infrastructure, internet, community, safety, healthcare. It's almost like a hierarchy of what you should look at first of all, because obviously you're going to need your visa. That's most important. Then at the bottom, healthcare. That's going to be more niche and dependent upon specifically where you're going. So that can be like the last part of your checklist or your key factors to consider. Okay, let's dive into some of the best places. And also towards the end of the conversation, I'd like to talk about some of the worst. I think that could be quite interesting and beneficial. And also I'd love to hear where some of the worst places and also the best, Jan, that you visited. But let's talk about the best. It's subjective to some degree. There are some things that are just set in stone, what visas are available, what the internet's like, what the infrastructure's like. But also there's elements of like weather, culture. These things might be a bit more subjective. So I also appreciate that the best places for digital nomads could vary depending on what you're into, but we'll try to focus on the more set in stone facts of these destinations and then give a little bit more of our own thoughts on the culture. and some of the things that maybe we specifically like or enjoy about these destinations?
I don't think I could name a best place in the world for digital nomads. In my opinion, that
Okay.
it doesn't exist. Really depends on preference, and even my personal preference. I do appreciate different things in different countries, and I could never name a top country for me.
Okay, well, let's just start with one.
I spent some time in Mexico in the past, and it's one of the most unique countries, to be honest. I've traveled to personally, and one that I definitely enjoyed traveling to a lot. Spent quite some time there. Actually, in the beginning of the pandemic, Corona pandemic, it's a whole different topic, but I saw things closing down there. But even afterwards, it was really nice, to be honest. It was a nice place to stay during that time, and in general, it's a great place.
Great cost of living, right?
Yeah, low cost of living, although it's now rising, especially in tourist areas. Really depends where you stay, to be honest. If you're in more local areas, it's definitely very, very cheap. But if you're staying in tourist hubs, expect to pay higher prices, especially compared to a few years ago. One of the reasons why I think Mexico is a great place is their very open visa policy. They have a 6-month visa-free stay for many nationalities. The list is really long. You can check that in Wikipedia. And that's something not a lot of countries offer. Most countries, maybe the average is 90 days. That's what I would guess personally. 90 days is a very common allowance for a visa-free stay. But some only offer 30 days, some even less. So it really depends. And Mexico is very, very open-minded with this 6-month visa-free stay for many nationalities. And they do also offer relatively easy access to a temporary residency in case you like to stay longer. It's a process that you have to start while being outside of Mexico, but it's achievable for most people, I would say.
So if you were to go to Mexico as a digital nomad and take advantage of the 6-month visa, and you decided that you wanted to stay, what you're saying is you would have to then fly out back home and apply for your visa to stay permanently, and then or at least a temporary residence visa, so it wouldn't necessarily be permanent, and then fly back. So you'd have to fly out and fly back.
I think so. I'm not 100% sure, but a few years when I was there, that was the process that was explained to me. Because I also considered that, getting a temporary residence myself at some point, which I then decided to not do. But yeah, that was the process that was explained to me.
And of course, there's a strong community already, a strong remote worker community.
Yeah, for sure. Especially places like Playa del Carmen, Tulum. It's full of digital nomads.
As a result, the cost of living in some of those areas, I assume, is probably more expensive.
It is, yeah. Especially in Playa del Carmen and Tulum, those places that I just named. It has risen sharply in the last few years.
Yeah, so the payoff is if you want to be in a community that's rich with digital nomads, then the payoff is probably that you're going to have a higher cost of living as a result. It's supply and demand, there's more people there, so there's finite resources, so to speak, and so you have to pay more money. But I still imagine, without jumping to a different place already, I imagine it's still, even in some of the more expensive places, still cheaper than, I guess, Lisbon, for example.
I don't have the data. Numbeo is a great resource, but it feels like it. It feels still quite a bit cheaper still. Especially eating out, if that's what you enjoy doing, it's gonna be a lot cheaper than Lisbon. Yeah, and even rent. It's going to be cheaper for sure. Yeah.
That's a very safe answer. I appreciate that. We don't know for sure. We don't have the numbers. You can have a look yourself, but it's probably safe to assume that that's true. But what about safety? What was it like when you lived there, and is that a concern?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to warn anyone not to travel to Mexico, but safety is kind of a topic to consider. While I was there, could have been a coincidence, but there was a person shot just a few blocks from my apartment while I was staying there. I don't know what that person did exactly. I don't know the reason why that person got shot. It wasn't a tourist. Probably some drug-related crime the person committed. But it's definitely a lot less safe than Western countries, if you ask me. More developed countries, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you could play devil's advocate and say people are shot every day in America, people are shot, people get shot in the UK. I think it's just positioning yourself in the safer places and making sure that you are being vigilant, you can't necessarily position yourself in the safest places because crime can come to you wherever you are. I mean, I lived in London for a long time, and I worked in a gym where someone was murdered, unfortunately, just outside, and the gym was in a very affluent area of London. So crime can come to you anywhere. So I think if you go to Mexico, you just have to make safe, savvy choices on where you live, and also just the way you act and behave. Just staying clear of nefarious people, so bad actors, and thinking about what time of day you're out and about, nighttime or or early hours in the morning might not be as safe. But I wanted to mention that because you're right to say that you don't want to warn anyone from going to Mexico, but I also want to say on top of that, it's like crime can happen anywhere. And I think a lot of the time it's just about making safe and savvy choices. Let's stick with potentially less developed countries. So we've discussed Mexico. What about Thailand, where you're currently staying?
Thailand is a great destination. I love to come here, and I do this quite a lot actually. Every year, I try to stay in Thailand for at least a few months. Various reasons. Their visa policy isn't one of them. They actually have a quite restricted visa policy. It's currently set at a 60-day visa-free entry for most nationalities. That can then be extended by another 30 days while you're there for a fee, of course. But they're now trying to, that's what I read this morning at least, they're now thinking about changing that back to 30 days. So that's definitely not ideal for longer stays. And even as someone who likes to travel very slowly, who isn't a digital nomad or so, this could be a reason not to travel to Thailand. In case you want to stay long-term, there are definitely several options. They have their elite visa, which is quite expensive in my opinion. Not sure exactly how expensive it currently is, but it used to be $25,000 for several years. I think 20 years or so. In case it's something you're considering, might be worth doing research on that. And there's also dedicated visa for remote workers currently. It's a little bit strict in the requirements, but maybe that's something worth considering if you want to stay a longer period of time. And they have also educational visas in case you want to train and train Muay Thai or learn how to do Thai cooking even. You can do that. You can do that here, and they give you a visa for that. Relatively easily accessible as well.
I guess that's available because it's probably a whole industry.
Yeah, I assume so, yeah.
The idea of having a shorter visa if they move it back to 30 days feels stressful to me. I'd like to be able to go somewhere and not have to immediately think about what I'm going to do to extend my stay if I'm having fun, the bureaucracy that might entail. I'd like to know that where I'm going, like the idea of Mexico, 6-month visa-free stay for many nationalities, that sounds fantastic. But the idea that it could go from 60 days to 30 days in Thailand, so you get there and you're immediately thinking, oh God, I've only got 29 days left before I start to, or probably sooner than that, right, to begin processing the extended necessary processing the documentation to extend your stay is probably something you have to think about sooner, right? Is that something that you have to think about quite often?
Well, I do my research, I do my homework in advance, and I usually know exactly how long I can stay in a country. I try not to extend visas quite a lot, just because it's an expensive process typically, and it's also very time consuming. It depends on the country, but in Thailand, for example, I find it quite time consuming. So that's something I try to avoid personally.
So you'll go from, let's say, Thailand once your visa ends after 60 days, I assume. Is that what you're on at the moment?
Yeah, currently it's a 60-day visa, and I actually extended that one just because I was planning a little longer stay this year. I stayed in Bangkok for quite some time, then moved to the south of Thailand. But typically I try not to extend it.
Can you share how much that cost to extend it?
Oh yeah, I think it was about $60. And that wasn't okay. the main issue. That's, relatively fair. It just, it's a little bit of an inefficient process in the immigration office, and it could be handled a little bit faster, in my opinion. But it was still all right.
Okay.
But it took like 4 or 5 hours, I believe.
Okay, in a stuffy immigration office.
Yeah, and if you're going to a country, if you're possibly vacationing there, not sure that's something you want to go through.
And what about the other key factors, like internet, for example?
Internet, I found it great, to be honest, at least in cities and tourist areas. I'm not sure about the remote areas. If you're going to the Thai countryside, I guess yeah, so it's okay to not have good internet there. It's something fine. So I would rather recommend staying on the beaten path, and their internet is typically not an issue. Although I would still recommend reaching out and asking about it just to be sure, because I've stayed in hotels where the internet connection wasn't really good, and then I regretted staying there. Yeah, afterwards.
Did you not reach out to that hotel?
No, I didn't. Especially for short stays, I typically don't do it. It's not worth the time, and it's also difficult. I don't think Booking.com or those other major hotel platforms, I don't think they allow you to get in touch with the hotel beforehand, unless you actually pick up the phone and call them.
Okay, and just to quickly go back onto one factor which I should have asked you about, I'm curious to know about the cost of living, because it's also, we've talked about Numbeo, but we're actually speaking to Jan, who actually lives in Thailand. But what could you sustain yourself on if you're just interested in a moderate lifestyle? Maybe you want to eat out every now and then, participate in some like cultural events, have fun while you're there, but also staying in a nice place where you can work from and feel comfortable. What would you estimate a necessary budget for a lifestyle like that?
It's a really good question, Johnny. Thailand can be as cheap and as expensive as you want it to be. So it really depends on your lifestyle. And I've personally I haven't come across another country where this is so vast, the difference between a very cheap lifestyle that can be lived and a very expensive lifestyle. So, for example, if you're planning to stay in rather local accommodation, I mean, still fine with air conditioning, good internet access, maybe a little bit outside of the major city centers, then maybe you can get by for everything with less than $1,000 per month. I think that can be achieved for sure. Most people, they find themselves spending a little more though. While I'm here, I think I'm actually spending quite a lot, because a lot of the little luxuries that I personally treat myself with on a daily basis, and it's nothing fancy, but sometimes I just like to eat Western food, and it's just a habit of mine. Those are quite expensive here, so I think I'm spending around $3,000 currently for both my girlfriend and I every month.
Wow! When you first said that, prior to saying your girlfriend, yourself, your partner, and yourself, I was a bit shocked. But I suppose $1,500 per person isn't too bad. What are the really vibrant places? Where are the really cool, fun places to visit in Thailand? I don't want to hang on too long on Thailand, but it is a very interesting topic, particularly because you're living there at the moment as well.
It really depends what you're looking for. The south of Thailand is great for beaches. You'll have the island lifestyle there. Lots of great islands to choose from. Some a little more busy, some a little less busy. And then in the north, I think you have a lot of culture, right? If that's what you're looking for, a lot of very interesting Buddhist temples, Buddhist monasteries that are also very, very open to receiving visitors, just because they don't receive them on such a common basis. And Bangkok, of course, is a mega city, which is also appealing, right, to some people. And I personally enjoy living a city life sometimes as well. Staying in bigger cities, has a charm. So it really depends what you're looking for. But Thailand, in general, a great and very diverse destination for both tourists, digital nomads, even pensioners with the right visas, of course. But it's good.
I want to finally mention the healthcare.
I think especially Thailand is a major destination for medical tourism. So there are a lot of people from foreign countries traveling to Thailand with the sole purpose of having a medical treatment. If that's what you're after, Thailand is great for that as well. But in general, healthcare isn't a big issue at all. Like, especially not in Bangkok. There are dozens of great clinics that you can access, private clinics as well. And then, in the south, it depends, I guess. Depends where you're staying specifically, but on most touristy islands, you should also have good access to healthcare.
That's really good. That's really interesting. I think that's probably then a common misconception of many to think that places like Thailand don't have good healthcare. So that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Let's go to somewhere a little closer to my home. Would you put Portugal in some of the best places to live? Possibly Spain as well?
Yeah, I would definitely. Southern Europe, I would look at Portugal and Spain together. Great destination for digital nomads. I personally prefer Spain a little bit more, just because it's less busy. Portugal has become so popular, unbelievable. Lisbon, Porto, Madeira. It's really difficult to find short-term accommodation there, just because it has become so popular among both digital nomads but also tourists. But Spain is great. Spain is a country I travel to almost every year, and I like to stay there for a few days, and enjoy myself.
Going back to what you said about the popularity of some of these destinations, as a result of a more thriving, busy digital nomad community in a lot of these places in Europe, is it becoming more expensive to be a digital nomad? Are people being priced out of the lifestyle? Because I feel like it may have been a lifestyle before that was quite accessible. You know, you could just jump on a plane, find a friendly, visa-friendly place, like Mexico, for example, land and just crack on with your work and live quite cheaply. But it feels like maybe that's changing now. Countries have cottoned onto it and they're trying to generate tax revenue from it. And more people are in these certain areas, so the price and cost of living goes up, accommodation, etc. And it feels like maybe Portugal or Southern Europe might be a perfect example of that, particularly Lisbon or Barcelona. Is that true? Or are there areas in Portugal and Spain, for example, where you could still live a lifestyle that might be a bit more affordable, might be for better, more appropriate for someone with a lesser income? Is that still possible in places like Portugal and Spain?
Well, there are for sure areas where you can have a rather affordable lifestyle, in both Portugal and Spain, but it's definitely not within the major metropolitan areas. You won't find that there. And yeah, there are definitely people being priced out of the lifestyle. But I think what's even more of a problem is that locals are being priced out of accessible living space. So that's an issue that countries need to look at. And even bigger group is tourists that just prefer to stay in vacational apartments rather than hotels. And landlords know that, obviously, so they try to rent on a short-term basis to maximize their profits.
To be fair, just to go back to the question about more affordable places, there definitely are in Spain, that I can speak to from research that I've done. Like I mentioned Granada earlier, Murcia as well. Murcia has a growing digital nomad community, remote working community, but it's all still quite affordable, particularly housing. Housing is going to, if you go to somewhere like Barcelona or Madrid, housing is going to be a huge part of your income or your wealth. It's going to take the majority of your income. Can you talk at all about the visas in these places, either Portugal or Spain? Do you have any information or knowledge?
For me as a German, it's obviously very easy countries to access. But for Brits, it's a little bit more complicated, I believe, and for Americans as well, obviously. So within the Schengen area, you typically get a 90-day visa-free access. At least a lot of countries do.
Just to jump in there, the Schengen area, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, it's a group of countries that built a Schengen area. There was an agreement that was signed in Schengen. I believe that's a place in Luxembourg, actually, but I have to double check. Luxembourg or France, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, you can stay within like 90 days within that whole region. So borders don't really matter. You might stay 45 days in Spain, 45 days in Portugal, and then you got to leave for another 90 days. So those 90 days, they're within a rolling 180-day period. But I personally enjoy staying in both Spain and Portugal, just due to the culture. I'm in love with the local diet. I enjoy the food that's being eaten there. I love the culture. I love to sit outside until late at night, listen to music while having, I don't know, a cold beverage. That's just something I like.
Yeah, that is quality of life. And in Spain as well, they have the longest life expectancy of, I think, at least all the EU countries. I'm not sure across the world. They may have one of the highest life expectancies of the whole world in Spain. I think it's 86 is the average life expectancy, which is pretty impressive. I think in the UK it's between 78 and 79 years old. And that is probably a lot to do with quality of life, the lifestyle that they choose. I'm not sure it's necessarily the Mediterranean diet. I think that's a fallacy. I don't think that's true, that, you know, you live for longer periods of time on diets of wine and olives. But they do have, it's just statistics, they do have one of the highest average life expectancies in Spain. Are there any other countries to discuss in terms of some of the best places before we talk about some of the more overrated and worst places to live?
Yeah, maybe one more country I would like to mention that I personally enjoy traveling to quite a bit is Colombia. Colombia definitely has its downsides, some safety issues, especially in the in the major cities, right? Rural areas are rather fine, I find. But yeah, also has a lot to offer, and the cost of living is exceptionally low. Doesn't really matter whether you're staying in a major city or whether you're staying in the countryside. Life in Colombia is very affordable, and I'm also quite in love with the local diet. Colombian food is great, the culture is great, and coffee is tremendous. Colombian coffee is great. So if coffee is a thing that one is interested in, Colombia is a huge destination. Honestly, one that you can't miss that if you enjoy coffee.
Again, this could be me being a naive Brit. When I think of Colombia, I think of Mexico, and I think of things like crime. Can you attest to anything about crime and safety?
Yeah, it's quite an issue, especially in the major cities, as I mentioned before. You'll find that some areas are more safe than others, for sure. But in most Colombian cities, there are definitely no-go areas where you don't want to be, especially not with white skin, and definitely not in the middle of the night.
Okay, before we talk about like potentially overrated places, are there any underrated or less known places that you would recommend that could be worth checking out?
Georgia is a great destination for people looking for an extended stay. They offer 1 year visa-free stay for a lot of nationalities, and also a tailored remote worker visa that you can apply to if you want that. Very low cost of living across the whole country. It's really affordable. Excellent wine. I think Georgia was actually the birthplace of wine. We have to double check that, but at least they claim to be. So that's where wine was invented. If wine is something you're interested in, Georgia is a great place to go to. The mountain scenery in the north of the country, it's tremendous. If you love ski, Georgia is, you can't miss Georgia. In 2022, I spent a few months just staying in Georgia, and I skied quite a bit because it was so affordable and so good.
What about safety? Is Georgia, because it's not necessarily the most stable politically?
Not sure about the statistics, but personally, I felt very safe staying in Georgia. Nothing bad ever happened. I found Georgians to be very helpful, very friendly as well, very outgoing. But I guess it also depends on the personal experience that you have there. Politically, there's some little bit of instability going on. They have their own discussions about whether to lean more towards Russia or whether to lean more towards the Western world. And that's something they have to figure out themselves. I don't think it's going to affect tourism a lot, to be honest. Typically, if you stay clear of those protests, gatherings, then you'll be fine.
So that's probably a good time to move into some of the more overrated, potentially worse places to move to. But just to recap, some of the places that we've discussed that could be worth your time, could be worth checking out: Mexico, Thailand, where Jan currently is, Southern Europe, and particularly Spain and Portugal, and also Colombia, and in my opinion, surprisingly, Georgia. But that sounds fantastic. Overrated. Now, one place that really screams, because I've seen it a lot on Instagram, is Bali. I visited Bali in 2008. I thought it was quite nice. I'll be honest. I thought, the infrastructure was quite poor in 2008. We're talking about a long time ago now, but the infrastructure was poor. I didn't feel that safe, if I'm being honest. And I did see a lot of crime. And it was quite is it messy? Is that the right word to use? I think it's improved a great deal from then. Some of the great parts of Bali, though, were, there were some very beautiful places, and the people, generally speaking, the locals were very friendly. They reminded me of Filipinos. They were very hospitable, very kind, but there were definitely some problems. That was back in 2008. So what can you tell me about Bali? Is it overrated? Because it seems to be highly rated, at least on Instagram.
To me personally, as someone who has traveled to 50 plus countries, I'm not even sure how many, I have to recount them. I think Bali is a little bit overrated. Mainly because it's so popular on Instagram, I assume. So that's probably the first place that people have in mind when they're looking for a destination. They're traveling to Bali, and that results in rising prices, over tourism, commercialization, bad traffic, problems in infrastructure. So it's, in my opinion, there are a lot better places than Bali. Bali is still a good destination, don't understand me wrong. But if I was personally to choose from all the destinations there are in the world, I don't think I would choose, I would put Bali, not even on my top 10.
You've also mentioned in the past Costa Rica as being overrated. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, Costa Rica, in my opinion, is definitely overrated, mainly due to the influx of American retirees. I personally have the assumption that they might, increase the prices there, the cost of living. Costa Rica is definitely the most expensive country in Central America, and in my opinion, on par with the United States in most areas, at least. And it has a lot to offer naturally. It's a beautiful country. Don't understand me wrong. You have great beaches, rainforest. They focus a lot on ecotourism, which is a great thing in my opinion. But it's just so expensive. And those are things that you can have in Panama, for example, which is right next to us, for a fraction of the price. And if you go a little bit more south to some other Central American countries, then it's gonna get even cheaper.
Yeah, I can't believe. I mean, I'm just looking at cost of living, $2,000 to $4,000 per month.
Maybe even more. Costa Rica is a crazy expensive country. Yeah, definitely on par with the UK. I don't think there are many differences.
Are there any other Central America, Southern American places that you might avoid?
There is a story I would like to talk about a little bit. It was 2018 when I was in I was in Costa Rica actually, crossing over to Nicaragua, and I was on the border. I crossed on foot, and I was planning to take the public transport to the next city, which is the city of Granada. And after crossing the border, I spoke to a local taxi driver who told me, Jan, you better take the taxi. Don't take the public transport. There's an armed conflict going on. And I thought he was full of shit, to be honest. And because if you've traveled a bit around Southeast Asia, but even Central America, you'll hear funny stories from taxi drivers that are telling you everything just to convince you to get into that taxi, right? But when the guy told me about the armed conflict, he was actually, he turned out to be right. So I took the bus. I ended up in Granada, but in that night, a violent protest started. They were protesting against the president, I believe. There were several groups, gunfights on the street, a lot of tear gas. People have died. So that was not a nice story. And there was one situation where I had a rental car actually, picked up a rental car the next day. And I drove into one alleyway, and then I saw a group of guys with guns. And they clearly showed me to not continue into the direction I was going. So I turned around, and it turned out to be fine again, but it was not a nice experience. And a learning I draw from that is definitely prepare, read the local news. Don't be like me. Inform yourself before you travel to a country. Doesn't matter which country it is. Get informed, and then maybe even trust the first taxi driver you meet, at least if the story sounds genuine.
Well, it's good that you're here today and that nothing happened, because there was live ammunition used against the protesters during that time. I think they were protesting against Ortega, I believe.
It was a horrible thing to experience. Honestly, it's something that still left marks on me. I mean, I still see those walls, right, with bullet holes in them. Then there was a point where they just burned down a church for some reason. I was staying in a beachside resort. I think just a few days after I arrived, because I thought that was one of the more safe places to stay in. And then at one night, there was a rumor going around, not sure where that originated from, but there was a rumor going around that the group of rebels would come to the village and rob us, right? And then the hotel staff asked us to bury our possessions in the sand so they couldn't find it. So I literally digged a hole, put my passport in it, and then hoped everything was going to be fine. Actually, a militia formed, a group of armed people that they were trying to defend the village then. It was madness, pure madness. And also the only way I was able to leave was at 2 a.m. when I took one of the last buses I found to Honduras, which was specifically set up, actually, that bus route to bring out, help evacuate tourists from the country. So I took one of those. And it was a long bus ride as well, by the way. It was all the way to Guatemala, which is a 20-hour bus ride, huge. And it was a mini bus, very uncomfortable. But I was so glad after leaving that country.
I hope that no one watching this or listening to this experiences something like that, but there's always something to consider. Part of this lifestyle could come with potential challenges.
I don't think challenges are necessarily a bad thing. I think that's something really good in human development. So try to face challenges. Don't be afraid of them. Just try to end up well at the end. And I think if I wasn't in those challenges that happen from time to time, I don't think I would be where I am right now. So I'm quite glad they happened, because it gave me a different perspective on life as well, and they helped me grow.
Excellent. Well, we'll make sure to put as much of the information that we discussed today, because there was quite a lot, into the show notes, the episode notes, or the description box if you're watching on YouTube. Jan, thank you very much for all of your incredible insight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Johnny, and thanks everyone for listening. It was a pleasure.